All right. So, Sage, give us your review for Split Fiction.
Yeah, so this was I guess only revealed at the Game Awards just kind of tail into last year. So real, real quick time between the initial reveal and the full release, which is great. I love when game studios do this. Wait until you basically are done to even announce what you're working on, and then there's like barely a wait for the marketing cycle to kick in. Um, Obviously, this is from the Game of the Year winner team that did It Takes Two, Josef Fares, who is just a character of a game developer, which is nice because I feel like there's only a few of those in the industry. You got like Sam Lake, Hideo Kojima. Josef Fares is kind of building up to being one of those names you start to recognize, and not just the games themselves. But he came out on stage. He was real cocky. He really talked this up. He said that it's going to blow your mind. There's stuff in this game you've never seen in any game before, which is a tall order, right? Because someone like me, I played a lot of games, a lot of different stuff for many years, and he wasn't lying. He wasn't lying. There is stuff in here, and I won't say too specifically on this particular point, but especially in the like third act kind of tail end of this game, there is some stuff visually here and how it is moving between the different levels and environments that I have never seen in a game before. And I like even just from and I don't know that much about coding, but even just the tiny bit of like my understanding of how difficult it is to have programming two full screens, even just for basic split screen, and how difficult that is. There's some like tech wizardry going on with like the big final act of this game. Like truly like mind blowing stuff. Like even if this game loses out on like Game of the Year to like a Grand Theft Auto 6 or something like that, this will I think still have a strong contender for like best individual level in a game for the whole year. Um, so the actual like core premise here, right? You have these two writers, this whole group of writers is being brought to this corporation. Um, they're going to be given an opportunity to get published, but in reality, this corporation is just you trying to put people in these machines so that their big robot can steal their ideas and generate content with it. So this game is also very clearly taking a big jab at AI, corporations trying to kind of mass collect like art or can commodify it as much as possible. So there's some good actual like little satire going on here. And then you have these two characters, Mio, Zoe, which are the names of Joseph Ferris's daughter, who he based these characters on, at least somewhat. And one of them's a fantasy author, one of them's a sci-fi author. They get pushed into the same like part of this machine as was trying to steal everybody's ideas. Their stories that they've been writing their whole life start colliding and mixing together, and they have to run through these stories they've written to escape and escape the clutches of this corporate overlord. We might as well call it Activision or EA or one of those. Of course, this is an EA game, which makes it all the funnier that something like that was able to be produced in this company. But I will say, there's some funny satire, and these characters can be decently charming. I think that this game does try a little harder to have like these individual character arcs play out throughout the game, and sometimes I think the plot here can feel like it's there just to facilitate the gameplay. Um, it's not always the strongest like interpersonal like character dialogue that you're given here. Not to, even to say that it's bad, but just sometimes like the chemistry can be good, and then sometimes it can be a little flat, and it'll bounce between those here and there. But that being said, uh, as far as the story being a way to just facilitate the gameplay here, uh, that's absolutely okay. And it's really not even a criticism because the gameplay here is just really, really special in that way that It Takes Two was as well. I mean, it is clearly an evolution of that concept. This is built around a co-op experience. You cannot play this with one player. You have to play this as with the second person. There's no other way to do it. And so not only is it like, you have a lot of games back in the day where co-op was an option, but it wasn't the only way the game was designed. So even though It Takes Two and this, they're really trying to bring back that co-op style of play from back in the day. But on top of that, they're building these games exclusively from the ground up, and every little game mechanic is built around this idea. So you're constantly hitting walls, right? If you're not working together, it encourages and fosters like a sense of teamwork here, like nothing else in video games does, other than perhaps like a team-based shooter maybe. But to have like a real, you know, narrative game, a real like we're actually going to move forward through this linear set of levels and do these puzzles and challenges. There's nothing else like this in the industry, really. And then to kind of hammer that point home, even It Takes Two feels like a very different game in certain ways because I think It Takes Two is especially a great game if you have a spouse or partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, who maybe they don't play games, or maybe it's even a parent or just somebody or a friend that just does not play a lot of games. It Takes Two was really really good for that experience because I feel like the it was not very demanding from like a difficulty level. And it's not to say that Split Fiction is a hard game. I wouldn't say that either. But if you're like second player is someone who has like no experience with video games at all, I think they might struggle a little more than someone would with It Takes Two. So that's maybe I feel like worth knowing if maybe you're married and your spouse never played a game, but they played that with you and you were able to get through that and have a great time. Just be wary that split fiction does require more coordination, more management of like multiple things at a time, shooting. There's combat in this that there wasn't really in the previous game. So there's a little more complexity to what's going on. There's boss battles that are more complicated, more environmental puzzle solving stuff here. That's just a little trickier on some of the timing. But still manageable, I think. And I think if you're an experienced player, you could kind of carry the other person too. I think for sure. But still, I think that's worth noting that it's just a little harder. So it might, depending on your situation and who your second player is, you know, kind of plan around that slightly more difficult level. But otherwise, it's just constantly doing new things. I mean, and this is something that It Takes Two did as well. Um, every 15 to 20 minutes, the gameplay mechanic is being thrown out. You're being given an entirely new one. And you really hammer home into this idea of you're splitting the game literally between sci-fi and fantasy. So you'll be in this Blade Runner city. You see the traffic flying through the air, all these hover cars, this grungy sci-fi world. And then you'll get sucked into a fantasy world where one of you is turning into like a giant monkey, and the other person is basically Groot, and you're fighting up like an ice palace, and there's like ogres and trolls, and even each level is a different fantasy thing and a different sci-fi thing. It's not even the same fantasy and sci-fi things that you're swapping between. Even those are different each time you go back to each setting. So it's constantly just throwing these different game mechanics at you. There's a level, I swear to God, where you're playing as hot dogs at one point. It
Yeah,
just is
play that much.
so, yeah, yeah, yeah. You're rolling around on the grill, getting burn marks on you. There's so much here, and they do these great little side story things. So uh, every main level you're in, it's like you're in the first sci-fi level, right? It's kind of like the first big real level of game. You'll come across these little side missions that are fantasy stories, and then vice versa. In the main fantasy level, you'll find little sci-fi side stories inside them, and these yet again will just continue to shift up the gameplay because in the middle of a level, three separate times you'll go into one of these side spaces, play the opposite genre, and have yet again for like a 5 to 10 minute sequence have a whole nother completely different set of gameplay mechanics designed just around this and then tossed aside. And that's like it's the impressive thing about the creativity that goes into this is you keep thinking like, oh well, you could make a game that plays like this, and they're like, all right, we've had 20 minutes of that. Now you're playing a different game, and that sense of variety and just ingenuity, it never stops. There's I don't think there's ever a point at this game where that slows down or you start to feel like you've done a bit of the same thing for too long. Like if anything, they probably could have gotten more out of some of these gameplay mechanics, and they did not rest on them, which I think is I really respect. And that goes, like I said, I don't want to be too specific, but that goes all the way to the ending where it is again something I've never seen in a game. Like you are getting something you've never seen in a game here with this. Um, and it just yeah, it's I have almost nothing but praise here. The only negative really I can give is that sometimes it does feel like the story's there to push the gameplay along. I think, hey, your sci-fi writer is, in a sour mood and kind of disagreeable, and your fantasy writer is peppy and bubbly and kind of, in this great mood most of the time. And there's a bit of cliche there with like the kind of personalities of the characters and connected to what types of stories they write. But again, it works well enough because these story sequences are pretty short. They do try to get a little dramatic with them a bit later in the game, and it's not bad. I don't know if those arcs super well connect. I think they're okay. I don't think they're bad. But I don't know if the game is achieving a really grand sense of its storytelling. I think It Takes Two might have been a little better in that regard, just because I think you with that scenario, it's a couple that's splitting up, so these characters are so, okay, for lack of a better term, intimately familiar with each other. So like the character bouncing feels like more organic, whereas here it's like these two complete strangers, and so I think it takes a long time in the game for them to open up to each other, and then for them to have this kind of emotional arc where each of them there's like some trauma that's kind of presenting itself in a bunch of the different stories that they've written. And then it feels a little simple, I think at times, but it doesn't harm the game either. It ultimately still works pretty well. So I would give this a peak, and really only coming down just a tiny bit for the story not being maybe completely knocking it out of the park, but the gameplay does on all fronts. And like I said, just it did something new. It did something that you've never seen before. And Joseph Fares was not lying when he got up and talked about how mind blowing that this game was going to get, because it really, yeah, I think even if you don't sit and play this game, I think it's at least worth going and watching footage of that last level, because from a coding perspective, I don't know how they even managed to pull off what they did. It seems ludicrous.
This game's getting critical acclaim. All around there, it's getting highly praised. Great reviews there, all around there. It's getting 90s out of 100s on Metacritic there. Getting a lot of 9s out of 10s there from various publishers there. 4s, 5s out of 5s there as well for this game. So far, it's sold 2 million copies, 2 million units there since the week of release. And this game came out in March 6th, so pretty impressive there. How much was this game? I believe this game was
49.99. And then but then to add on to that, it takes two did this as well. But the game comes with a friend pass. So you buy the game and the person you want to play it with doesn't. Okay, well it doesn't matter. You bought it, so they get to play it with you
man.
online, like between your systems. You like the other person does not have to purchase their own copy. And then this game adds to that even more by also making that crossplay. So not only does someone on the PlayStation not have to buy this if you bought it on the PlayStation, you can play this with somebody on the Xbox that didn't
Hmm.
even have to buy their own copy.
Oh wow, so that's pretty nice. And who did you play it with?
I played it with my girlfriend.
Okay, so is she a big gamer? Or?
She is actually she
Oh,
does quite a bit herself. So this was a very easy, very nice thing to come together for. I will be doing a stream series for it with No Name on the channel, so we will be doing like a full playthrough of it. I'll have run through it once, of course, already, but yeah, it's probably 12 to 15 hours or so. Maybe add another hour or two if you want to like go back and clean up and get like the platinum trophy. It's maybe 16 to like 100% everything. But it's not super long. It's $20 cheaper than the average AAA game, and it's got honestly gameplay that's better than the average AAA game. So
mm, okay. So getting a lot of bang for your buck there. $50 for about a 16-hour experience there. And you said, so this game is even if you're not a big gamer there, even if you have somebody that's with you that's not a big gamer, they might be open to this and be fun to play with them. Yeah. And even if somebody, what's the difficulty level of this? Is it you think that?
um like It Takes Two, right? Was like I feel like anybody could play It Takes Two. Like it was very not demanding. This one it's a little more demanding. There are some timing things with certain puzzles and certain like there's combat in this that there wasn't in It Takes Two. There are some like actual like action scenes here where you have to use like a sword or you have to it's the part where you have to pass like a bomb back and forth between you, and it'll explode if you don't catch it. So there's some stuff that requires a little more timing. I don't think it's like a significantly bigger ask, but I would say it's still probably not worse than like an easy mode on most games. But just like I said, since It Takes Two was so friendly to non-gamers, if the person you're playing it with has no experience with video games, they might struggle a little bit with this one, maybe a little bit more than you would with It Takes Two.
Okay. And your rating for it was the peak.
Yeah, I'd give it a full-blown peak. I only pull it down just a tiny bit because I think certain elements of the story, maybe don't totally come together for me, but it's not a bad story by any means. It's just certain points don't land maybe the way that I feel like it's trying to. But at the end of the day, it's about the gameplay here, and the story is a way to move that gameplay along. And the gameplay is, like I said, by the end of the game, it gets to an out of this world place.
Nice. So high praise from Sage for Split Fiction. There, he gives it a peak. I guess it's on your list. One of the best games, if not the best game so far of 2025.
It's definitely for me the first contender for game of the year. There hasn't been a ton so far this year that I've played that I've been like thought like, oh wow, this could really this is kind of the first big one. I know Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is probably going to be in that conversation for a lot of people. I haven't played it, so I can't speak on that, but yeah, I started to get little hints at what that conversation is going to look like at the end of the year.
Cool. So early game of the year contender, say sense. Yeah. Everybody's loving the Split Fiction. Check it out now.